And that's because we have to realize that when we get to retirement, we start taking money out of our investments, out of our retirement accounts, that it's different. It's different than when we were saving money all those years. So I want to use an analogy of if we were climbing up and down a mountain. So imagine, when you're in your working years, you're in your saving years, this is when you're climbing up the mountain. And so you're taking income and you're saving that back on your balance sheet, or you're earning maybe even like pension credits, all of these things that we're doing in our working years with the eye towards retirement. And the goal is we get to the top of that mountain, hooray. And this is when we step off into retirement and we start going down the mountain. And when we're doing this, we're climbing up and down that mountain, there are certain forces like gravity that are always present, right? It's present when we're going up the mountain, it's present when we're going down the mountain, but they impact us differently. So if you're like me and if you've ever like tripped and fallen, like going up the mountain, going up a hill is very different from when you're going down.
Let me jump something in personally here. In June of 2000, I went with the Boy Scouts to fill my Boy Scout ranch. And in getting prepared for that, a 12-day hike, 85-mile adventure, I hired a trainer to work with me. And he taught me something that I had never thought about. He had done mountain climbing. Mm-hmm. He said, we got to work on muscles you never use. Because you're thinking you're just going to go up the hill. That's easy. Coming down is where most people get hurt. Mm-hmm. Broken ankles, broken knees, hips. So we got to work on reverse engineer what you think you need. And it was amazing because he had me work on muscles I'd never even thought about. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I forget, I was 50-something years old. At the time of doing that, I was doing better than some of the young kids because while they were more flexible and younger, they didn't have the right muscles developed. Mm-hmm. And I think about that every time we discuss this about going up and down the mountain of financial issues. It's no different in the real world. Right. And it's not just gravity, it's also rocks on the ground or a stump.
That's right.
Or a root, rather.
That's right. Yeah, and so just like gravity is always there, it's the same thing when we think about these financial risks of they're there when we're, in our working years and when we're in retirement, but they impact us so differently.
I'm looking forward to, I want to add something when we get into the distribution phase more mm-hmm. about what I'm experiencing now mm-hmm. and how this planning has helped me deal with that.
Absolutely. What's great is I love when John and I go through this because we have, both perspectives here. I'm 41 and John's 72. And so while he's still working, he's not, fully retired. We still have two different perspectives of being more in that kind of like early mid-career versus in retirement.
Correct.
So we can kind of share with you both of our viewpoints here. So let's talk about some of these risks that we face. So the first risk we're going to talk about is mortality. That's when we said earlier is like living too long. So when we're in our working years, the risk isn't living too long, right? It's what if I die too soon? So like, for example, in my case, I'm married, I have two boys that are age 8 and 11. And so the risk that I have to my family is if something happens to me tomorrow, I pass away, that the family has lost, my income. Now they have this financial change to their world. And I've taken that risk off the table because of the life insurance that I have. But when we get into retirement, it's not dying too soon. It's the opposite. It's living too long. It means that I'm outliving my resources. And as we go through these other risks, in fact, mortality, or sometimes we like to call it longevity, that actually compounds all the other risks that we face. John, I've heard you say a million times, if we saw tax rates go up to 50 or 60%, but you only live 2 years in retirement,
no big deal.
No big deal. It doesn't really impact you. Yeah. But imagine living 20, 30, 40 years in retirement.
And now you're in trouble.
Now you're in trouble. Yeah. So it's this idea, and we hear this all the time from clients of, I don't want to be a burden on someone. I don't want to have to go back to work at 80 if I don't want to. And that's what they're talking about here. It's this idea that I've outliving my money, outliving my resources. There's also the risk or threat of what if I get hurt or sick? So again, in my working years, if I got hurt or sick, it's what happens to my income. So I'm still here. I didn't die, but I can't work. I can't bring in an income from our family. So like in my case, it would all be on Brian, my husband, to support the family. But when we're in retirement, it's not a loss of income, because you're not really going to have a loss of income from that case, because your income is more not from an earned basis like in your job. It's more about the cost, the expenses, the cost of care.
But may I challenge you on that one? What about the people we see, though, that have not done a good job of proper insurance? So now their investment accounts, their retirement accounts, have to become double duty.
Sure.
They're having to take money out sometimes at the worst possible time and the worst place for tax planning out of the retirement account, because they have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 that they've got to spend because they were not properly insured. And that's true of all types of insurance. It doesn't matter if it's car insurance or health insurance, life insurance, whatever. You have a choice to make. Do you insure it yourself by taking that risk with your assets, or do you have professional insurance to cover that?
Right. I think when we talk about this is when you had your amputation in 2021 and had to have all the remodeling done at your house.
Right.
That you didn't have that on the agenda for that year. You didn't plan for that.
And it came out of my assets.
And it came out of your assets.
It came out of savings account. Of course, I had the money to do it, so it didn't cause me any inconvenience. But I'd rather have that money in my pocket than give it to the other people.
Sure. But those are things that can happen, that we do have to dip into our assets for that, or have, needing care for a longer period of time.
We don't sell Medicare supplement policies, but it's the same thing with dealing with my cancer now.
Sure.
And also the amputation, but also the cancer treatments. Between Medicare and my supplemental policy, I've not had to dip into my personal savings or investments to pay that whopping $15,000 every 3 weeks that they charge for doing those chemotherapy infusions.
Right.
And the $5,200 every 3 weeks for those chemo pills. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And I've had 21 of those damn things so far. So just to do the math, that'd be a huge amount of assets gone.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's why it's very important that we make sure that we have a proper plan for that, for how, if, I know we say a lot of times too, if we live long enough, right, we're going to need care, right? Knock on wood. I hope that's true for all of us, that we live a very long time in retirement. And so you may be faced with this, how do I, who's going to provide that care, and how do we pay for it?
And where will it be provided?
Provided? Absolutely. There's also market volatility, and I'm sure most of you know we've seen a lot of that in the last few weeks. It's been pretty bumpy, and when we're in our working years, volatility, while we may not like it, it may not be fun to see your retirement account or your investment account down on paper. It can actually help us have a better rate of return.
Let's talk about that. You're the investment guru among the two of us. You've taken over that role more and more. Explain to people why that's the case. Why is it good?
Yeah. So while I don't love seeing the market down, I do know that as I am putting money into the market every single month, I am buying stocks at a lower price. I am buying them when they're on sale, when the market is down. And so now I have more money in the market to participate in that recovery when it comes back, because it's going to come back.
Well said.
And so that's going to help me actually have better return than if it was just up all the time.
It's like going to Publix and all of a sudden they've got a 20 or 30% sale on the groceries you like to buy.
You stock up.
Stock up. That's why I talk about tuna. I love tuna, so I always buy tuna when it's on sale. So if you go in the store and it's 50% off, I'm going to buy everything they'll buy.
Right. That's right. So so it can help us from that standpoint. We're in our working years. Now it helps us, in that case too. Many of our clients are still saving money in retirement. So it can help anyone who's saving, especially on a regular basis.
So let's pick on the old guy here. It says both. So tell me what my risk is with the volatility at age 72. And most people listen, probably not 72, but if they're getting close to retirement, they'll feel that down the road. Sure.
So the risk here with the market is that the market volatility may be the thing that makes you run out of money. So go back to that living too long, and that's what we fear, right? That we're going to run out of money. So when we're in retirement, we start taking money out of our investment accounts, out of our retirement accounts. Well, we hope that they're going to kind of keep pace with that, right? If we're taking money out, ideally in an ideal world, our investments would keep pace. But when we take money out of the market when it's down, we've locked in our losses. Now that money has to work even harder. It's not even just recovering how much I took out for a withdrawal. It's how much the market is down. And it's got to work that much harder to try to get back to where it was.
Most people listening to this can think back and remember to 2008.
Yes.
September 2008, the market was down like 43%.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon to see someone's 401k down 35, 40, even 50%, depending upon how they were invested. So imagine you're taking income out of that and your account drops by 40%.
Yeah.
You can't recover from that if you're taking income out.
Mm-mm.
And a lot of people panicked and put all their money into money market funds. How many times do we see those, or somebody earning 1.7% because they were scared?
Yeah. I mean, in that case, if someone was invested like 100% in stocks, right, and they saw the market go down 40%. So like they got $1 million January 1st. Imagine they took out 100,000 over the course of the year and it's down.
Right.
You know, now you're talking about probably having less than 600,000. So how is that going to impact? One, it's going to be a lot of stress. I don't even want to think about it. First of all, we'll talk about the financial side, but just the stress that you would go through of feeling that, right? And then the financial side. Now what's my income going to look like?
Well, I didn't need the income because I was still working, but I sure didn't like seeing mine go down.
No, me either. I was really young too at the time, but me either. Nobody likes to see it. But it does feel very different. Now, there's also taxes. So let's talk about taxes for a few minutes. As you mentioned, we've been hearing a lot about that lately. So when we think about saving money, and we hear this a lot, so again, if I'm in my working years, what are we told to do? We're told to put as much away as we can in what? In a 401k, in some sort of tax-deferred vehicle. You know, that might be a 403b or a 457 plan. But we're told, oh, put away as much as you can so that you can, I'm going to use air quotes, save on taxes. But you're not really saving them. You're just deferring them to the future. And so while we're in our working years, it can feel like the best place to save $1 because we're going to get that tax deduction today. In retirement, it can feel like the worst place to pull $1 because of the taxes. John, how many times do we have clients where they do want to go do something, or maybe they need money for something, and we talk about, okay, great, you know, take it from your IRA, and they're like, oh, but what about the taxes?
Right.
I don't want to do that because of the taxes.
Well, that's because they're guilty of allowing the tax tail to wag the economic dog.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to understand that if we're going to choose those accounts, it's going to be the most expensive place for most of us to take money for vacations, things like that, or educating grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why in our process we tell people you got to have both. You got to have some money that's in the retirement accounts and some money that's not in retirement accounts, so you can enjoy your life when you retire.
You know, I know we had a client last year who they were like dead set on taking a bunch of money out of their retirement account to pay off the mortgage on the house. And we said, you know, can we show you a different way? Would you be interested in seeing like a better way to do that because of the amount of taxes they were going to have to pay? So there's definitely some things you can do to structure that, but we got to kind of keep an eye on that. And we're all guilty of it. And most of the clients that we see too are in that situation. So if they're, let's say, if retiring from the state of Florida, for example, you can find you've got a pension and you've got Social Security. And those are both taxable incomes to start off with. And then you start adding on what you're taking out from the retirement accounts. It's added on top of that. And so now you can find that it pushes you up into a higher bracket.
Let's talk about some of the tactics that are being used to convince us to maximize that. We're told we're saving taxes, and we're told we'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. Hardly any of our clients are in a lower tax bracket that we see. Most of them are the same or higher.
That's right.
Because of what you just described. They've got all this money they saved, and when they're forced to start taking it out, either with RMDs or they just need more money, every dollar gets taxed. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to be in a lower tax bracket in most cases. And that's not even considering the fact tax rates can go up and will. Mm-hmm. Just a matter of when. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, that whole discussion about taxes is why we have so much volatility right now, or a lot of it, because there's so much uncertainty. Will the tax laws stay the same, or will they, change and we'll go back to higher brackets?
Mm-hmm.
It's all tied together.
Absolutely. And this last one here is on inflation. And we've heard a lot about inflation over the last few years. And usually when I think about inflation, most of the times we don't really feel it. We know it's there, we know it's happening, but it's more subtle. If inflation is at that 2 or 3%, it just kind of gets absorbed into our everyday spending and we don't notice it as much. I think we've all noticed it the last few years. And I remember even them kind of saying, yes, inflation is, 9 or 10%. Oh no, some days at the grocery store we're at 50%. So it's not just a kind of across the board. So we've definitely felt inflation in the last few years. Also, I feel like the more we hear about it in the news, the more we pay attention to it as well. So when we're in our working years, how we combat inflation is we earn more money. And how do you do that? You do that by, I get a promotion, I get a pay raise, I change jobs. It's having these, cost of living adjustments, raises, allows you to kind of keep up with inflation. In our retirement years, what ends up happening if we don't have a way to combat inflation, I love how it says here to spend less. Who wants to spend less in retirement? Who wants to have less of a life in retirement?
So at a time you have more time and to enjoy the relationships of the people you love and care about, now you're forced to spend less because you're worried about running out of money, especially if you're healthy and might live to be 90 or 95 or 100 years old.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so we don't want that for you. We don't want that for our clients. We want to have a plan in place that we can combat inflation because we know it's going to happen. We know you're going to need more income tomorrow than you need today. So you got to have a plan for that.